Giga Mexico was the next big hope, and now maybe those hopes are dashed, but there is some signs that progress continues, where they will build perhaps the compact, perhaps the robotaxi, perhaps all kinds of things we just don't know yet, but we're going to get into it a little bit. I am joined by Herbert from Brighter. Thank you so much for joining me, Herbert. And I'm Brian. Welcome to Future Asa. So, Herbert, I don't know if you saw this, but of course, we've got this story from Tesla. They are saying that construction is still ongoing. Construction is still moving forward, shared the Secretary of Economy. Now, I don't remember if this is the same politician who said the groundbreaking is going to be on that Sunday. I think that was the governor of the region.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to make of that. We do know that the jobs had disappeared from the company's page. That's not ideal. We've not had any change in signal. We also work hand in hand with them. For example, right now in the incentive contract, the communication is very close. We continue working. The only thing that I could not say that is not defined is when they're going to start, but they are coming. What are you making of this? Are you worried about it yet?
Well, first of all, I'm not worried about it at all, right? So this decision to change the locations of where they're building the cars is quite clear that they slowed down Giga Mexico. They did that for a reason. Their focus now is on the low affordable cars, right? The more affordable cars that's going to be built off the same production lines. And so you're going to go ahead and just use Giga Shanghai. That's why I think that Tom Zhu went back to Giga Shanghai, why he is now no longer this global lead for auto. He's now focused in Shanghai. They're going to make the affordable cars there. That affordable car will be sold as far as possible. And then the focus for Giga Texas is going to be the Robotaxi first design car. And I think they're just waiting for Giga Mexico, right? Once the Robotaxi is finalized, once you know that it's actually working, you've got some production coming out of the Giga Texas, that's when they'll go and say, hey, we want Giga Mexico to help us build this. But I don't know if that's any longer the priority when they made that complete, pivot to be fully focused on Robotaxi. If this works, all you would do is create the exact same cars that you're currently making now, and then you have the affordable models, but then you will take the Robotaxi first design. And so that's what you're going to do. Because initially, right, the initial plan was to create the compact car, which they're still doing, that's still going to happen. But that's what we all assumed that the Giga Mexico was going to be used for. Now, the best use of Giga Mexico would be the Robotaxi first designed car. Is that what you would expect as well?
100%. So what I'm looking at is the Model 3 was first made in Fremont, and when they had it dialed in, not perfected, perfection is not a destination but a journey. When they had it dialed in, they copied it over into the factory at Giga Shanghai. And in doing so, they were able to get up to production speed very, very quickly. They made the Model Y based on the Model 3. That got out very quickly. When they copied it into the new location in Shanghai, it came out very quickly. Now, let's say you are going to build a dedicated robotaxi. This is a utilitarian vehicle. It doesn't need to be complex. It needs to be as simple as possible, as affordable as possible. Let's say you're making 20 million a year. We know the 20 million has quietly been removed from the impact statement, but let's just say that's the number. If you can save $5 a car and you're making 20 million, that's 100 million a year. That's $1 billion over 10 years in savings for a $5 efficiency. That's why you don't want to build the factory too prematurely. It just wouldn't make sense. Now let's take a look real quick. Adrian CG, Adrian in the hat. He has shared some new footage showing what's going on. They're still building infrastructure. This is not Tesla building it. This is part of the deal. Whether they're trying to make this an electromobility hub, and that was actually stated in the article as well, that the objective is to boost the build out of its electromobility hub. Nuevo León plans to share its plans for the future during the International Mobility of the Future Summit, June 26th and 27th. This is what Shanghai did. They brought Tesla in because you're going to kickstart it. And once it's kickstarted, there's no going back. And it's worked out well for them. They've got a lot of good competition, healthy competition in China. Nuevo León already is very successful at building parts. That is already a parts hub. There are Chinese manufacturers already building parts in factories in Mexico, in this part of Mexico, and they're hoping to also build cars here very soon. I'm not seeing as much progress over here as the Secretary of the Economy perhaps would hope.
I mean, what I think is happening is there's a delay, right? Tesla has said, okay, I don't think they've canceled Giga Mexico yet, but
No.
they don't need it as fast as they needed before. Because if you are all in on robotaxi and it works, autonomous cars, you only need 1/5 of the cars that you would have needed to be
Mm-hmm.
sold.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to rush. You've got Giga Texas. And the question for you is, how big is Giga Texas? How much space can they do? How much longer can they just continue to build how many cars of the robotaxi design cars in Texas before they're going to need to expand to Giga Mexico?
Well, need is a strong word. They've already got the land in Texas. They could realistically do both. They could realistically, once they get that pilot line ironed out, they could build
Yeah,
it elsewhere on the site. There's room
that's my point.
to,
Yeah.
vastly increase. I wasn't sure why they would build in this particular part of Mexico when it's only an 8-hour drive from Giga Texas, but
Hmm.
they had their reasons. And I think one of those reasons might have been labor costs, but the cost of a bot is the same everywhere. And it could be that the
It's not.
delay, well, that's the thing is such a small percentage of the vehicle cost is labor. And in the next 5 years, we could see that cost drop to whatever Optimus costs, which is going to be the same in every country. So any perceived labor savings is minimal at best, but
Yeah.
neutral at more likely.
The reason I'm saying it's not is because you know 2 years ago Tom Jew was talking about how to improve the efficiency of creating cars, and he said when Giga Mexico is up and we have 10,000 Tesla employees, imagine if 5,000 of them were Optimus. So they were already talking about Optimus in the factories, and so I don't think that their decision to go to Giga Mexico was because of that lower labor costs. Um,
What's the advantage then?
I I don't know. I
I,
think
I,
it's
I would still say it's because of the trade agreements that Mexico has. They have twice as many free trade agreements
yeah,
as the US does,
yeah,
which could get them into far more countries. And in that regard, it would make sense to have a small pilot line in Texas and a much bigger line in Mexico, just for that reason alone. And if we look at the video, we do see that there is stuff being torn down in the area where the site is likely to be built. And yeah, it's not big or exciting necessarily, but they're getting it done.
but
So
just to confirm, Brian, this is work being done by the government, by the city, by the state of New Mexico, not by Tesla at this point, correct?
less clear. So this is some of it is definitely being done by the government. Everything on the highway is being done by the government, but
Right.
not all of the clearing is happening on the government's property. There was an old, what would you call it, a horse ground? I forget the word for it. That was on the site that has been removed. So there has been some clearing
Hmm.
to prepare the land, but very, very little. And if you look at it like this is obviously on the highway where they're putting
Hmm.
in a new overpass. It is possible that Tesla is still putting some money in anticipation of using this site. It's just unclear when. It's very unclear when. So
Hmm.
I'm thinking this is going to come out later than I had expected for sure.
Yeah. And that's same with me, right? That's what I was saying. I don't think that they've canceled Giga Mexico, but they don't need it this year, maybe not even next year, but then they will need it once they've got everything dialed down, right? Once they know that they need to double down on making robotaxi first design vehicles, number one, and the unbox model, and then number two, maybe in the bots. Like, where are they going to make the bots? They're going to start with Giga Texas. Giga Texas will be the place where they will make the original design of the robotaxi first design vehicle, and then eventually the bot. And then once it gets passed beyond their britches, they're going to go to Giga Mexico to build it in scale. That's the most logical.
Now, in other news, yes, while we see things like this, very exciting, what we also see is first Tesla Megapack installed in Cancun Hotel Zone in Mexico.
Mhm.
It's tough to have a luxury resort in your town or a bunch of them when power may be intermittent.
Yeah.
That's not something tourists love. And the way you mitigate that is with a big, expensive, noisy, stinky diesel generator. If only there was a better way. The battery will store energy from solar panels to power the 200-room hotel during peak hours. So this is looking to go actually not just as backup, but as the whole thing. Maybe it'll carry it through the night with power. So have you heard about this? What do you
And
think? What a great
yeah.
application, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Did not hear about this, but it's so obvious that every single hotel, every single building, every single company will eventually be buying mega packs. This is just an inevitable thing that's going to happen. And we're going to see big cities, big states buying at bulk. It's now proven by Australia and many other, first movers that this actually works. So more and more companies will start doing this.
And as the cost of the Megapack comes down, which it has been recently and is expected to continue to do so, more and more use cases come online. If it cost $10 million, you would only have them in like the Arctic and military installations. But if it's $500,000, now it's going to be at every place of business.
I think at this point it's absolutely supply constraint, not demand constraint. So it's just up to Tesla to be able to make this because they've got a multi-year backlog already of contracts, and it's up to them. So now that China is going to come online in 9 months, it'll be in production by March, by first quarter of next year, and it's going to be the same size as the Lathrop factory. Again, this is something else. I wish that Giga Mexico was actually Megapack factories. That's what they should make that. Imagine how many Megapacks they can create from there.
They just need to
Although,
get the LFP supply domesticated, and that
yeah.
would make it vastly more useful.
Can you explain to me though? Because I'm getting mixed information here. So cars, it's much better to be localized, to build it, to create it in that same country, that same region. But Megapacks, do they need to be? Isn't it much cheaper to send this out? And yet, I've also heard other people say that every single country will have their own Megapack factory.
I remember Elon saying every continent would have its own Megapack factory, and it's because they are very large and difficult to transport. They are now over the weight limit of a single semi-tractor trailer combo. So there are savings to having them local when you can bring in pallets of components and send out finished products that don't have to go 10,000 miles. And you can picture on a cargo ship, loading in something that heavy is going to be an added cost. But when they cost $1 million, $2 million a piece, that cost is easier to absorb. But in terms of tax advantage, you always want cars to be made locally, in part because of the shipping hassle, but in part because of the localized incentives. We need domestic battery production for that. We need domestic auto production for that.
Yeah.
If you want to take advantage of that. Yeah. So I would say there is an advantage, but it's the last mile advantage would be my take. And the reason it makes so much sense to build the Megafactory Shanghai next is because that's where all the batteries are. And there's huge demand throughout Southeast Asia. And that particular location is very close to the ports. You've seen it on drone footage. It is less than a mile or two away. It is very close. So getting it to the port, not as big of a deal.
Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So guys, in the comments, what do we miss? What do we misunderstand? Let us know. Leave it into them comments below. And of course, a huge thanks to Herbert for swinging by, helping out, making us a little brighter as he does. And of course, a big thanks as always to my patrons, my supporters on Patreon, on YouTube, on X. They're the reason I'm able to go on all these journeys, see all these places, meet all these people, talk to experts, some of whom would never appear on camera. And I thank you all for your support. Everyone else, like, subscribe, do the usual. Stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the flippity flop.